Ngā mihi Aotearoa. It is an honour to be here, and I am the 33rd speaker, so be kind. The last one, offering economic solutions. I follow from what Jeff said, his assumption really that the challenge for the left is not the overthrow of capitalism, it's working out how to do capitalism better. And it's hard work. And it's going to require the best brains on the left and constant vigilance and a willingness to confront sacred cows. When I put together a few overheads, I guess I must have been feeling quite grumpy when I read them through this morning. I thought, they sound angry and grumpy. But like Mike Joy, I am angry and grumpy. What we've had is government making policy behind closed doors, setting up task forces at great expense, and then ignoring them. I have never seen the outcome of a working group such as the Welfare Expert Advisory Group on Poverty. I have never seen a report buried so successfully. The left have to do better. At the moment, what we're getting is a lot of critique of policy through the social media, through blogs and commentary at the bottom of the blogs. This is no way in a developed economy to have the kind of appropriate policies that we need to be developed. We need some kind of institution, such as the Institute for Fiscal Studies in London, that's set up, it's well-funded, it's left-wing, and it analyses policies as they're put up. So we haven't got that. We need the equivalent of the Business Roundtable with a left-wing perspective, with the clout that can influence what the politicians do. So as we go towards this election, what we're going to have is a collection of soft soundbite fuzzies. And they don't get us very far, and they're very annoying. And if you looked on your seat today, one of the political parties has put a brochure there, and what they've said in that is that we should have a universal family benefit, a payment for children, $30 per child. I think they meant $30 per week per child. Well, something like that has got no content. There's no distributional analysis at all. That policy would cost $1.5 billion. It would hardly help the poor at all, and it would give an awful lot of money at the top end of the distribution where it's not needed. So we've got to be very careful about these soundbite fuzzies that get bandied around. This is not the real world. It's not the hard work that needs to be done. Does that mean? Oh, okay, I can go for a bit longer, that's good. When Kevin Haig was talking this morning, I think he had a really good visual about the economy being a subset of the environment. The narrative challenge that we face, I'm going to use another kind of visual, is that we've got to use our scarce resources of land, of labour, of natural resources, machinery, technology, to produce the kind of things that actually matter and will enhance all lives now and for the future. So the device or the visual that I'm going to use, some of you will remember from Stage 1 economics. It's one of the first diagrams that you encounter, that of the production possibility curve. So what it shows is that if we're fully using society's scarce resources, then we have choices, which is represented by that bowed-out frontier. And if we're on the frontier, having a fully employed economy, we can only have more of one thing if we have less of the other. Used to be, if you're old enough like me, guns versus butter as the illustration. I put up there public goods versus private goods, collective goods versus the sorts of things that we buy in the private markets. Now, the problem that we have right now is, of course, we're not on that frontier. So we're not talking about more of one and less of the other. We are at a point well underneath that frontier, and sadly probably going to go even further. So it could be the R word, recession, but I put D, the depression symbol there. And the task that we face is how to work out to get back to the frontier with a different, not business as usual, mix of goods, public goods and private goods, but something that is much more meaningful. So even within the kind of public or collective goods, we want a better mix. We want things like state-run early childhood education that was mentioned by Liz Gordon. We want a better environment. We want better health services. And the private good mix has to be different again. And when we get to the frontier, we want it to be fair. We want there to be a really much more equal sharing of resources. So let's think about it in real terms. Let's not get hung up on the unreal economy, the monetary side of the economy. Money is the lubricant. Money is the mechanism or the tool whereby we make that transition to the frontier, and debt the same thing. But it's not the real things we need to concentrate on. And most reputable economists are saying, let's not worry about debt at the moment. That is not the issue. Let's print some money, but let's be careful at the same time and rely on people like Jeff to sort it all out one day when we actually get to the frontier and need to mop up some of that liquidity. So our policies have to be not just spend more money to get to the frontier, but deliberately redesigned and designed in a way to be redistributive. Because sadly, the situation, as other speakers have highlighted, is seriously unequal with the COVID crisis that we've had and set to get worse, unless there is deliberative action. But let's please stop scaring ourselves silly that public debt is the issue and that our poor children are going to be overburdened by this public debt. Now, there's a whole raft of reasons, which Jeff is more qualified than I am to talk to, but this idea that somehow the debt is going to burden our children, they're also going to inherit that debt. Of course, it does matter if we borrowed in terms of going more into debt in an overseas way, but it's just a bogeyman that's out there. And I do want to say, because it's a passion of mine, that if we are going to get concerned about public debt, please can we measure it properly? And I thought, seeing it so late in the day, that you really would appreciate the next table. I think we can blame Bill Rosenberg for this. But the figures actually come from Treasury, and if you just focus down at the bottom there, the big bogeyman is that by 2024 that public debt's going to be 55% of GDP. Well, actually, we've got assets on the Crown balance sheet. It's just they've got a ring around them and they're treated separately, and those are the assets in the New Zealand Super Fund. And this is Treasury's figures. If we net those off, then the public debt's 37%. Well, that's far less scary. So please let us measure debt properly. The prime objective of getting to that frontier is that we've got to stop the surge in inequality and poverty. We've heard today about how low-income groups have already paid a very high price. So we can point to all sorts of policies that are being put up or have been put up recently where they are not well designed, where they are wasteful policies. We cannot afford that. I mean, I'm not going to talk to all the ones up there, but if we think about the winter energy payment, that is probably guilty of spreading this year about 400 million unnecessarily to well-off superannuitants. We can't afford those sorts of policies. If we're really thinking about the problem, many speakers today have talked about housing. Housing is critical. It's a fundamental consideration. If we think about it from an economist's point of view, what we've done in housing reflects hugely misallocated scarce resources. Leaky buildings, going to cost a fortune to repair, scarce resources being sucked into building luxury mansions at the same time as a really poorly functioning rental sector and overcrowding and homelessness. Our housing market is a mess. And if we're thinking about getting a better mix, what we need is less elaborate, luxurious housing and more state housing. So how do we get that? Housing is the inequality elephant in the room. Housing has been treated as a tax-favoured, tradable commodity. It's how people get rich in New Zealand. It's how people save for their retirement. And that has to be fixed if we are going to make any progress. Now, this lovely diagram is really designed just to show how out of kilter New Zealand is, and other speakers have also shown this. This is a real house price index picture. If we go back to the beginning in 1990, that was when we should have introduced a capital gains tax. The housing market has taken off. We're now top of the pops. We've replaced Ireland. We know what happened to Ireland back 10 years ago. We are now at the top. The time has passed to stop to talk about capital gains taxation. We've got to stop talking about that. We've had all these reviews that have gone through why we need capital gains taxation. Let's stop it. We can look at what's happening in the purchases of housing currently. This goes up to 2015, but it's also what's been happening as the housing market has picked up, that the share of new purchases favouring investment purposes is 40-something%. It's worse in Auckland than the rest of the country. So using housing as a way to get wealthy is just not what we should be doing. Now, I'm very conscious that I'm running out of time, but if we can't tax capital gains, what should we be talking about? In my view, rather than talking about a land tax, the alternative that makes the most sense is this risk-free rate method, which is a real mouthful. It is better understood as the net equity approach. And in that, what you do is you aggregate a person's net equity, that is their equity less their mortgages in real estate, and you treat that as if they had deposited it in the bank and were earning an income on it of, say, 3%. Now, a net equity would have various design characteristics, which I've run out of time to go through, but it would have the benefit of a very useful source of revenue, which we desperately need, as well as shifting the emphasis away from luxury housing over investment in housing as a commodity. And I know that I've run out of time, so I won't go on to the income protection part of what I was going to say. Thank you.
Bye. Kia ora, Susan. Thank you so much.